want to save money, start a business.
What's up, everybody? It's Troy Kearns. In today's video, I'm going to be breaking down one of the biggest viral TikToks that I ever had, which is an interview, a podcast form interview with my accountant, Mark Sherman, my wonderful CPA. I'm going to break down this TikTok and go through all the comments. So if you got any questions, make sure that you comment below. Let's jump into it right now. All right, so here's the video.
If you want to save money, start a business. Your business doesn't have to be successful, because let's say you're a fisherman and it's a hobby and you make flies for guys and you sell them to your buddies for $10 or whatever. You don't do too many, but you decide to start a small business that you're going to sell 10 flies a year and they're going to sell them for $10 a year. It's not that great of a business, but everything that you do involved around that business becomes
deductible. In other words, the whole thing, what I mentioned earlier, was the definition of a deductible expense is what is ordinary and necessary in the course of that business. So if, making the flies, if you have to travel a certain place to do this, everything that you can document associated with your deduction is going to make that deduction deductible.
Let's get into this a little bit, and I want to talk to you about what was the point of me asking that question, because I did set up that question specifically because I knew that was information that you may not know, that I certainly didn't know a long time ago, and that I've known now. But you always hear these people, like when you're reading tax books and you're reading tax loopholes and you're looking at all this stuff, and people say start a business. And literally what that means is, it means instead of you getting paid by your social security number, you're now creating a sheet of paper, which is an LLC, limited liability company. Just by having that piece of paper, it's going to save you money, right? It's going to save you tax dollars because you're treated differently than a sole proprietor. So let's see what the comments say. Let's see what people asked, and let's get into it. So the number one comment is by TikToker: how to get audited in record time. So, obviously, when I put stuff out there, I know that hey, they could use this in a court of law against me. Hey, the IRS could get against me. I'm not worried about it because we do stuff correctly. Obviously, at any point in time, the IRS could come in and say, hey, you know what, we're going to audit your books and we need to make sure they're good. So that's why it's super important, not only if you start a business, but you need to keep good books. You can't just make it up. One of the fortunate things that happened to me, unfortunately, was in 2007, before I really made any money, I got audited. Why did I get audited? I got audited because I had become a real estate agent in Washington. I made a commission. I was sloppy. It was time for me to turn in all my receipts. I sent them all to my accountant at the time, not this guy. And guess what happened? We didn't report some income. It was just an error, just a mistake. And that triggered an audit, right? Because you not reporting income triggers an audit. That's where I met Mark. I realized I got audited there. My accountant says, no big deal. You don't got to worry about it. So she just keeps sending out new tax returns, new tax returns, new tax returns. And the guy finally says, no, this guy's going to have to pay $7,000. That's what I owe the IRS, $7,000. So finally I said, enough's enough. I'm going to go in there. I'm going to meet with the IRS guy, and I'm going to get him to see my way of thinking. And after listening to him, I realized that she had burnt him out so much with just sending him bull crap that he was like, yeah, you owe the money. And I was like, oh, thank God that happened now. So not only is it important to have an excellent accountant, but you better make sure that your books at any point in time are ready to get audited. And since that point in time, I always say there's one huge lesson. In 2008 was the lesson of, it's not about your bookkeeping, it's about your CPA, right? If you have the two working in tandem, it's a great scenario, because usually the CPA is going to apply whatever in the books and then submit them to the IRS. But what Mark told me when I originally went to go hire him, which is such a powerful point, is I said, how would you stop this from ever happening to me again? And you know what he said? He said, yeah, it's pretty simple. I just go look at the IRS website and I see what's submitted by the employers, because when your employer gives you a 1099 at the end of the year, you go check to make sure that your math matches with the math of the IRS. And if it doesn't, and you submit the wrong paperwork, get an audit, just like me. So he says, I check that before I submit stuff so that we don't trigger audits. Let's go to comment number 2. Saved_85. I had an understanding you could only do that for 3 years and you have to show a profit after 3 years. I don't even know the answer to that, and I'm not going to speak about something I don't know the answer to. In fact, we might even call him right now, see if he answers the phone. Hey, I'm recording this conversation because I want to ask you a question. I'm doing a video right now. So this guy commented, and I didn't know how to answer his comment, but this guy commented, Mark, he said, I had the understanding that you could only do that for 3 years and then you have to show a profit after 3 years. As a CP...
No, that's not accurate. The issue is the IRS wants to know, in the business, is there any intention to generate a profit? If you have no revenues and you've got a business where there's no revenues for 3 years, the IRS will look at that business more than likely as a hobby, because they would see it doesn't look like there's any intent of the taxpayer to create a profit with this. Because I have clients that have had losses for 20, 30 years on their businesses, but they've always had revenues. So they have an intent to create a profit, but they just don't get it done. So that's not a means for, this should be audited or this is a problem. But for businesses that have no revenues, absolutely.
Right. So they got to have revenue. They don't have to have profit.
Correct.
So how could this work for, say, a small backyard mechanic reselling used cars and maybe a few a year?
Again, it's all about the intent to create a profit. So if they generate some revenues with this business, that's the whole key.
A bunch of guys said IRS audit speedrun because of my video. What are quick ways that you would get audited by the IRS? Would it be posting a TikTok or would it be filing your taxes incorrectly?
Probably more likely filing your taxes incorrectly.
What major things trigger an audit for the IRS?
Well, like I mentioned before, you have no revenue, but tons of expenses on the Schedule C. Schedule C is the highest audited form on an individual tax return. 99 out of 100 tax cheats use Schedule C to be able to cheat the government. So they do it by creating large losses, and then they may have a W-2 or other income that gets reduced, and as a result, if they've made estimate payments or paid in withholding on their W-2, they're getting that money back. But then when the IRS audits them, they find out all their expenses are sham. So because of that, people having a business with no revenue, unless it's their very first year, they want to be careful that, if they're taking expenses, they have support for those expenses and receipts. And
Bookkeeping?
bookkeeping is kind of a really important thing. If you have a number of transactions, you want to be able to track things. I recommend getting accounting software. That would help them. I do have one other statement to make.
Yes, please.
This is an official dad joke. There was this constipated accountant who tried to work it out with a pencil, but he couldn't budget. Have a good one.
One last question. If people want to hire you as an accountant, how do they get a hold of you so they can get expert advice? What's the office number?
702-645-6318.
Sweet. Thanks for answering the question, Mark.
You bet.
So anyways, you guys can already understand that I've probably got the best accountant on earth. There's always hearsay, this and that and the other thing. And you notice that one thing I didn't do is I didn't say, I think you're right or I think you're wrong. I said, let's go and find the source, right? If you enjoyed that video, if you enjoyed hearing what Mark had to say on the phone and you want to hear more from Mark, more questions, what would they be? What would you want to know from a genius accountant about how you can save money from the IRS? What would be the first question you want to ask somebody who has that skill set? His skill set, you notice how quickly he came up with that answer? He knows everything. Like he knows that IRS code book. So what questions would you have for somebody who has that skill set? Put them in the comments below and make sure you subscribe. Make sure you get ready to start investing in real estate. And as you know, if you're investing in a business, if you're investing in real estate, make sure that you have a great accountant. Make sure you keep great books. Make sure you share this video with a friend. Anybody you know who's got a business, make sure you share this video with them. And definitely, if you're interested in a real estate coach, make sure you click the link below and we'll book a strategy call with you so that you can get passive income by investing in real estate and not pay any taxes the legal way. Peace.
My job is to point out how out of touch rich people can be. This should be easy.
They said it's not people's choices, it's the system. Everything that you can control boils down to a choice.